What's up everybody? My name is Anand from underdogstrength.com and I just attended Mike Tuchscherer's Reactive Training Systems seminar here in Mountain View at Boss Barbell Club. For those of you who don't know who Mike Tuchscherer is, not only is he one of the top powerlifters in the world and holds multiple world records in the IPF, but he's also known for being one of the top coaches in the world. He has coached multiple world record holding powerlifters. Now, I've been following Mike's work for quite a while, and when I first found his content, especially when it relates to autoregulation, I was really impressed by his content. So it was a no-brainer for me to attend the seminar. For those of you who don't know what autoregulation is, I've made a video on my channel in the past, but I can go over it briefly in this video. If you look at any successful sports training program in the world, nearly all of them are gonna be auto-regulated in some way or the other. Now, the reason for this is that most sports training programs, there's a coach involved, and the coach has the ability to get input and make adjustments on the fly. So we may have a training program which is our plan, but based on the inputs that we see, we can increase our performance or decrease our performance based on how we feel. But how we feel is not an objective way of measuring our performance. And to do that, we use something called RPEs, which stands for Rating of Perceived Exertion. Basically, it's a scale from 1 to 10, but practically we only go up to 5.5 or 6 to 10. The RPE scale allows us to put an objective number on subjective feedback. Now, when I talked about autoregulation in the past, I was referring to how our performance changes from day to day. And the days that the weight is moving slow or we aren't able to perform that well, we can make a small adjustment down and then we can still maximize our training for that day. What Mike talked about in the seminar was, as an athlete, you want to go into each training session with a controlled, aggressive mindset. Meaning you always want to push yourself for PRs because that's our ultimate goal. So on the days that you know that you have a PR based on your warm-up sets, your workup sets, then you should be able to go for that extra PR if you know for sure that you have it. Now, regardless of the training program that we follow, even if we have a fixed training program which has prescribed weights, reps, and sets, autoregulation gives us the ability to go for a PR if it's there that day. The seminar started off with an introduction to coaching skills. Even if you're not a coach and you're only an athlete, that simply means that you are coaching yourself. Now, if you look at any successful sports team, you have the owner of the team, you have the general manager, you have the athlete, of course, and you even have a coach. But especially when it comes to powerlifting, and if you don't have a coach, you're pretty much playing all of these roles in addition to being an athlete. So the seminar talks about what makes a good coach. Typically, when we think about hiring a good coach, we think about things like the results that they have, the athletes that they work with, their own accomplishments. While all of these are important when hiring a coach, the most important thing that a coach does is that a coach is a creative problem solver. Each client that a coach has a particular unique set of problems that the coach has to solve in a creative way. So the top 3 coaching skills that a coach should have are, first of all, creativity, that the coach is a creative problem solver. The second skill is that a coach is a great leader. And the third skill is that a coach has a good relationship with the athlete, because a coach has the potential to change someone's life. The seminar then went over the RTS toolkit, where we discussed things like autoregulation, the benefits of autoregulation, the limitations of autoregulation. I talked about autoregulation earlier in this video, but autoregulation allows us to have a plan but also make course corrections along the way. These course corrections are based on the input that we get in the moment. The next question that we were asked is, what is the point of training? The point of training is to put the right weight on the bar and then lift that weight for the right number of times or repetitions. Every time we go to the gym or every time we lift a weight, we know how heavy that set felt or how light it felt. But how do you make it objective? You may say that the set felt really easy, or you may say the set felt really hard. You may say it felt heavy, you may say it felt light. But how heavy is heavy and how light is light? So with the RPE scale, what we can do is we can put a number on that. And RPE 10 means that that was a max effort set and that you could not have done even one more rep even if you tried. And RPE 9 means that you could have done one more rep for sure. And if you aren't sure, you can put an RPE 9.5, meaning you maybe had one more rep but you weren't sure about it. If you knew for sure that you had 2 more reps left, then that would mean that that's an RPE 8. And if you start going much below an RPE 7, it usually gets a little bit less accurate beyond RPE 7. Now it's really important to track your RPEs after you're done with your set. So some people make the mistake of calculating the RPEs while they're doing the set, and that usually messes things up. But as soon as you're done with the set, you can make a note of how many reps you think you had left in that set. Once you have that number corresponds to a certain intensity. Intensity simply means the percentage of your 1 rep max you lift. Once we have that RPE number, that RPE number relates to the intensity of the set. If you were to do a simple Google search on the RPE chart for powerlifting, you will find a table similar to this, where you'll find the RPEs and how they correspond to the number of reps you do, and based on that you can find the actual intensity of that set. So why is it to find out the right intensity? The majority of the results that we get come from training at the right intensity. Intensity is like a compass that points us in the right direction, and volume is what determines how fast we go in that direction. So why is it then that we don't do all the most amount of volume possible and go in that direction as fast as possible? And this is because our recovery resources are limited. The analogy that Mike used was the sink analogy, where we have a sink with a drain at the bottom and then we have a tap on top. The water coming in from the tap represents the stress, and this stress is not only limited to training, but it relates to all the stresses that we have in our lives. And the drain is how quickly we can get rid of that stress. Most of our training should be done at a medium stress level, meaning our stress level and our recovery level are about the same. And usually what you will find is that this level is equal to your MRV, or maximum recoverable volume. If your stress and recovery are at the same level, that would be medium stress, right? But what if your stress goes down? This would mean that this is a period of low stress. If it's a period of low stress, your sink will ultimately empty because the stress coming in is less than the rate at which the stress is going out. On the other hand, if your stress goes way over your recovery, then your sink will ultimately overflow. Most of the time, you want to train in a situation where the stress level is at a medium level. But there are some situations where you have to go higher stress, and then you can follow that up with a period of lower stress. Continuing on with the sink analogy, what can we do if we want to increase our ability to handle more stress? If water is flowing into a sink at a certain rate and we don't want to reduce our flow, the only other option we can do is we can increase the size of the drain. This increase in the size of the drain actually means you have increased your work capacity. Work capacity simply means that you do more and more volume as you progress as an athlete, and you can increase work capacity through training more, through better sleep, and your nutrition. So what are the 2 biggest contributors to your stress? In the seminar, I learned that the 2 biggest contributors to our overall stress are training volume and psychological arousal. The training volume simply means how much work we put in, the number of sets and reps we do, and that can add up to our stress. But on the other side, how psychologically aroused we get when lifting weights can also increase our stress. For example, if someone has a competition coming up, their week leading up to the competition does not really have any hard training in it, but they're psychologically so aroused because of the meet coming up that their stress levels actually go up, and this can affect their recovery. So when we train, we keep track of our progress and we keep a training log, and by looking at that training log we can look at how much volume we're doing. But most of us don't actually track our recovery, and to do this, Mike showed us a tool that he has on his website called Track. What Track does is that it gives you your level of recovery based on the questions that they ask in the software. If you want to check out Track, I'll leave a link in the description below. So once we have our how much volume we're doing and also how well we're recovering, we can look at two things. We can look at our progress and we can look at how we're feeling throughout the training cycle. So if our progress is going great and we're feeling great, then we should probably stay there most of the time. If our progress is going great but we're feeling maybe under recovered or not feeling that great, then we probably don't want to stay in that for a long time. On the other side, if the progress is not going great and we're not feeling good, then that probably means that we need to adjust our training volume and that we're currently exceeding our work capacity with how much volume we're doing. And finally, if the progress is not going great but we're feeling great overall, that's simply an indicator that we need to increase our training volume. The next thing we talked about was exercise selection. Now this is where the training program will vary the most between individuals. The training program is designed to make progress and assess each athlete's weaknesses. The training program is ultimately based on specificity, and we talked about the SAID principle, which stands for specific adaptations to imposed demands. So if you want to get good at lifting the most amount of weight for one rep, you will have to train for that specifically. And the further away you get from that, the less the carryover will be to actually lifting that weight for one rep max. So basically there's three kinds of exercises we can do. You have your competition lifts, which are very specific. You have your assistance lifts, which are very close to your competition lifts and are directly designed to improve your competition lifts. And then we have our supplemental exercises, which may not have a direct carryover to our competition lifts, but they're very important anyway. So if you're a competitive powerlifter, your competition lifts would be your actual competition lifts, which would be your squat, your bench press, and your deadlift. Your supplemental lifts would be close variations of your competition lifts. So they could be things like front squat and overhead press. The goal of having these assistant exercises is to fix weak movement patterns. And finally, we have supplemental exercises where the goal of these supplemental exercises is to fix weak muscle groups. And this can be things like doing your GPP work, you're doing maybe your bicep curls, things which may not have direct carryover to your competition lifts but are important to do to strengthen those muscles and get general hypertrophy or fitness, which can be beneficial in the long term. Next thing we discussed was how to identify a weakness in the movement. Now most people have a sticking point somewhere in their movement, and usually people look at the sticking point as the weakness, but their actual weakness is actually lower than their sticking point. And in order to look at the actual weakness, you have to look at the point at which the barbell actually starts to slow down and not at the point that it stops completely. So for example, in a bench press, if a person gets stuck over here and that's a sticking point, their actual weakness would probably be 2 or 3 inches lower, where the bar actually starts slowing down. So by looking at the bar speed and where the bar starts slowing down, we can fix our weaknesses in that range of motion by using these assistance exercises. And then when you identify these weaknesses, the first thing you want to do is, first of all, you want to fix your technique, because if you can fix your technique and that solves the problem, then you probably don't need to do a lot of these additional assistance exercises. But if your technique is alright and you're still having these weaknesses in your range of motion, then you can assess what is happening and you can put in those assistance exercises that will fix your particular weakness. The next thing we went over in the seminar was individual differences and how different people can be, even though physiologically most of us are not that different. And this has a lot to do with a lot of different factors, such as your age, your training age, your own weaknesses, your own build. And these individual differences will not only determine what exercises you do, but they will also determine at what intensity you train at, what frequency you train at, and also how long does it take you to peak your performance. Some athletes require a shorter time to reach their peak performance, some require a slightly longer time. As a coach and as a creative problem solver, you need to take into account a lot of these factors and also look at the feedback that you get to write the right program or give the best program possible for that athlete. So this was just a very short overview of what we learned. We actually went into a lot more detail, and in that seminar we actually even had a training session where Mike was guiding us along the way. If you ever have the opportunity to attend a seminar like this, even if you are not a coach, but if you want to be the best athlete possible and coach yourself, I highly recommend that you check out their seminars, the RTS seminars. I hope this was informative, and if you want to learn more about this, check out my article in the description below. And if you like this content, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more great info. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.